At Grandma's will reading, my mom put a firm hand on my shoulder, blocked the door, and whispered, "This is for family only, Catherine. You're just in the military. Don't expect anything from us. Wait outside." I turned toward the hallway, ready to accept another exile. But the lawyer's voice cut through the room like shattered glass. "No, she stays." My mom's smug expression instantly vanished. What my mother and golden child brother didn't know was that Grandma had kept a secret for over 15 years, a secret involving forged bank accounts, missing military funds, and an untouched estate worth millions. And when that lawyer pulled out a thick yellow envelope and began to read, my mother's face went completely pale. "My name is Catherine Morgan. I'm 28 years old, an active duty captain in the United States Army, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible thread holding my family together while they treated me like complete trash." Growing up, my mother, Mrs. Morgan, had eyes for only one child, my older brother, Julian. Julian was the golden boy who could do no wrong, even as he squandered every dollar my parents ever saved on failed startup ideas, luxury sports cars, and an absurd lifestyle he couldn't afford. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through high school, earned a military scholarship, and earned my commission through sheer grit. Whenever I achieved something, my mother would wave it off with a dismissive roll of her eyes, reminding me that I was just in the military and shouldn't expect a dime from the family's assets. When my grandmother Eleanor passed away 3 weeks ago, I flew in straight from my deployment base, exhausted and heavy with grief. Grandma Eleanor was the only person in that family who had ever truly seen me, loved me, and believed in my worth. But standing outside the grand, polished oak doors of Harrison and Associates law firm, I wasn't welcomed as a grieving granddaughter. I was viewed as a threat. Mrs. Morgan and Julian stood in the foyer, dressed in designer black suits, whispering intently as they waited to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Before I could even reach for the heavy brass handle of the inner office, Mrs. Morgan stepped directly into my path. Her eyes narrowed into sharp, cold slits as she placed a firm, unyielding hand on my shoulder, physically barring me from entering. "Where do you think you're going, Catherine?" she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "This meeting is for real family, the ones who actually built a life here, not someone who ran off to play soldier. You've been away for years. You don't belong in this room, and you certainly don't get a piece of your grandmother's estate. Wait out here in the hallway where you belong." Julian smirked from behind her, adjusting his expensive silk tie. "Listen to Mom, Catherine. You're just in the military. Don't expect anything from us. This is adult business." I looked at them both, feeling that familiar, bitter sting of rejection. I was exhausted from deployment, heavy with grief for Grandma Eleanor, and too tired to fight them in a public lobby. I nodded slowly, took a step back, and turned toward the waiting area, ready to accept yet another exile. I had barely taken 2 steps when the heavy oak door swung open wide. Mr. Harrison, a tall, stern man in his late 60s, who had managed my grandmother's affairs for 3 decades, stood in the doorway. His sharp eyes scanned the foyer, instantly locking onto Mrs. Morgan blocking my exit. "What is going on out here?" Mr. Harrison asked, his voice echoing sharply against the marble floor. "Oh, nothing at all, Mr. Harrison," Mrs. Morgan said, smoothing her dress with a polite, fake smile. "Catherine was just leaving. We didn't want her cluttering up your office during the official reading." Mr. Harrison's expression hardened into granite. He adjusted his glasses, looked directly past my mother, and met my eyes. "No," Mr. Harrison said, his tone cutting through the quiet hallway like shattered glass. "She stays. In fact, Mrs. Morgan, under the explicit legal instructions of your late mother, this meeting cannot and will not begin without Captain Catherine Morgan sitting at that table." Mrs. Morgan's smug smile instantly vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, stunned panic. The look on my mother's face was priceless, but she quickly pulled herself together, masking her shock with a tight, dismissive laugh. She brushed past Mr. Harrison and took her seat at the center of the massive conference table, with Julian sliding into the chair beside her like a proud prince waiting for his crown. I walked in quietly, taking a seat at the far end of the long mahogany table, keeping my distance from their toxic energy. Julian couldn't contain his smug excitement. He leaned over to Mrs. Morgan, whispering loud enough for me to hear, "It doesn't matter that she's here. Dad's gone, Grandma loved us, and we're the ones who took care of the family name. We're getting the house and the commercial properties." Mrs. Morgan nodded, resting her hands on her lap with absolute confidence, already acting as if she owned the room. Mr. Harrison sat down at the head of the table, opened a thick leather binder, and began reviewing the basic surface assets of Grandma Eleanor's estate. He listed the historic family home in downtown Sacramento, valued at $1.2 million, and the 2 commercial retail spaces downtown, valued at nearly $800,000. Each time a number left the lawyer's mouth, Julian's eyes lit up with pure greed, and Mrs. Morgan adjusted her posture, practically glowing with anticipation. They truly believed that their years of sweet-talking and alienating me from Grandma had finally paid off. I sat silently, looking at the empty seat next to me, remembering how my mother had weaponized my military deployments. Every time I was overseas, Mrs. Morgan had told Grandma that I was too busy to care about family, deliberately intercepting my letters and hiding my phone calls to make me look like a cold, heartless granddaughter. They thought they had erased me completely. But as Mr. Harrison finished reading the initial list of properties, he didn't hand over the signing papers. Instead, he closed the leather binder, folded his hands, and looked directly at my mother with an unreadable expression. The silence in the room became heavy and suffocating. Mr. Harrison reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick, official yellow envelope sealed with red wax. Printed across the front in bold, clear lettering was my full name, alongside my official military identification number. Mrs. Morgan's eyes darted from the envelope to the lawyer, her polite smile instantly vanishing. "Mr. Harrison, what is that?" she demanded, her voice losing its composed edge. "My mother was very clear about how her estate should be handled. If there's been some last-minute change, I must remind you that in her final months, Eleanor was confused, frail, and certainly not in a sound state of mind to be modifying legal documents." Mr. Harrison stopped, holding the envelope in midair, and looked over the top of his reading glasses with cold authority. "Mrs. Morgan, I advise you to choose your words very carefully. Your mother underwent 3 independent neurological evaluations, all conducted by certified medical specialists, specifically to ensure her mental capacity was documented beyond any shadow of legal doubt. She was sharper than most people half her age right up until her final day." Mrs. Morgan swallowed hard, her jaw tightening as Julian shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The lawyer carefully broke the wax seal and pulled out a stack of notarized documents. "6 months ago," Mr. Harrison continued, his voice ringing clearly through the silent room, "Eleanor executed a complete revision of her estate plan. Under the terms of this legally binding irrevocable trust, the family home, both commercial properties, and all primary liquid accounts were officially transferred out of her personal name." He paused, looking directly at me. "Every single one of these assets was placed into the Eleanor Morgan Irrevocable Family Trust, for which Captain Catherine Morgan has been named the sole trustee and primary beneficiary." Julian leaped out of his chair, his face contorted in anger. "That's insane! She was deployed overseas. She wasn't even here. You can't just hand everything over to her." "Sit down, Mr. Morgan," Mr. Harrison commanded, his voice cold as steel. "Because what I have to read next directly concerns both of you." The lawyer unfolded a handwritten letter bearing my grandmother's distinctive, elegant cursive. He cleared his throat and began to read aloud. To my daughter and my grandson Julian, if you are hearing these words, it means I have passed, and you are undoubtedly expecting to divide the wealth I spent a lifetime building. But over the last 5 years, while Catherine was proudly serving our country, I discovered what you were doing behind my back. I found the forged checks, the unauthorized wire transfers, and the missing military stipend money meant for Catherine's education that you secretly siphoned into Julian's failed luxury ventures. Mrs. Morgan's breath hitched, her face draining of all color as if she had seen a ghost. I did not confront you then, the letter continued, because I wanted to see if your conscience would ever lead you to confess. It never did. Instead, you isolated me, intercepted Catherine's letters, and lied to me about her love for this family. With Mr. Harrison's help, I conducted a full forensic audit of my accounts. Every dollar you stole, totaling over $400,000, has been meticulously cataloged. Mr. Harrison set the letter down and adjusted a second stack of papers. Your mother did not press criminal charges, Mrs. Morgan. Instead, she restructured her estate so that the $400,000 you siphoned stands as your advance inheritance. Under the terms of the trust, you and Julian inherit only the outstanding tax liabilities and legal debts associated with those fraudulent transfers. You owe the state $210,000, due within 60 days. Panic exploded across my mother's face. She grabbed the edge of the conference table, her knuckles turning bone white as the realization crushed her. The arrogant, untouchable posture she'd maintained for decades shattered in a single second. All her grand plans to use Grandma's estate to pay off Julian's mounting debts had evaporated into thin air. "This is a mistake!" Mrs. Morgan shrieked, her voice cracking with terror. "I'm her daughter. You can't leave me with $200,000 in debt. Catherine, tell him you won't do this to your own family." Julian looked like he was going to throw up. He stumbled backward, staring at the financial audit sheets Mr. Harrison had laid out. The paper trail was undeniable. Every single unauthorized withdrawal, every forged signature on Grandma's accounts, bore his IP address and signature. He wasn't just broke, he was standing on the precipice of total ruin. "You did this to yourselves," I said quietly, my voice steady and firm. For years, I had believed my grandmother had forgotten about me. I had swallowed the painful lie that Mrs. Morgan fed me, that I wasn't loved, that I was just an outcast in uniform meant to be tossed aside. But sitting in that chair, looking at the mountain of evidence Grandma had spent years assembling, tears filled my eyes. She hadn't forgotten me. She had been fighting for me in silence, gathering the truth, waiting for the exact moment to strip my abusers of their power and hand me the key to my own future. Mrs. Morgan fell back into her chair, burying her face in her hands as she began to sob. Julian stood frozen, staring at me as if seeing me for the very first time, not as the invisible girl they could push around, but as the sole controller of everything they needed. "Mr. Harrison," I said, standing up and straightening my uniform jacket, "please issue formal legal notices for Mrs. Morgan and Julian to vacate the downtown properties immediately. They have 30 days to remove their personal belongings before the locks are changed." "Catherine, please!" my mother cried out, reaching across the table with trembling hands. "We're your family. You can't throw us out on the street." I looked down at her with calm detachment. "You made your choices years ago when you decided to steal from Grandma and destroy my place in this family. Now you'll have to face the consequences, just like everyone else." I took the master key and the official trust documents from Mr. Harrison, thanking him with a respectful nod. As I walked out of the conference room, leaving my mother's wails and my brother's stunned silence behind me, a deep sense of peace washed over me. Over the next few months, I used the Eleanor Morgan Irrevocable Family Trust to establish a foundation dedicated to helping young military service members who have been financially exploited by their families. Grandma's legacy wasn't just preserved, it was transformed into a beacon of hope for others fighting the same silent battles I once fought. Standing up for yourself isn't about revenge, it's about honoring your worth and protecting the truth. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have given them another chance or enforced the trust just like I did? Comment below and let me know your thoughts.